Hi everyone, welcome to episode 53 of Woolen Spinning. It is Thursday, January 19th, and my name is Rachel. I am also freezing cold. I am so cold. I've been cold all day. I've been wearing my exploration station. I wore it this morning to church with Norah, and in the sanctuary I was so cold, and I'm still at 5 o'clock in the evening freezing. So bear with me. I try not to wear bright colors around my neck when I'm showing you color on the show, but today I was just so cold I had to do something. So I'm also wearing my Tinder cardigan by Jared Flood, which I knit the fall that we found out we were pregnant with James, which was back in October of 2011. So that was kind of nice to pull it out because I have been wearing it, but not as much as I would like to. And I thought, I need to wear it more. So it was one of the few cardigans that I kept after I culled a whole bunch of them about a year ago, and I haven't worn it. So I pulled it out this morning. I've been wrapped up in it and my exploration station and just trying to keep warm. It's because I'm tired, and I just worked quite a number of shifts in a row, and I was away from home because I stay at my parents' when I'm working night shifts so that nobody has to worry about being quiet in our house. And it's just, lack of sleep and getting all turned around with days and nights. So yes, I am freezing. I hope that this finds you all well. This is a podcast about spinning and handspun, everything to do with handspun and spinning. So thank you for tuning in. To those who are returning viewers, thank you so much for continuing with me. For those who are new to the show, thank you for giving me a shot. And to those who are Patreon subscribers for the show, I really appreciate your support because you're the ones that keep the show on the air week in and week out. If you're interested in learning more about the Patreon work that happens here, please head over to patreon.com/WelfordPearls. We have just started in the new year a RSS feed that is an audio podcast for Patreon subscribers, and you'll get a taste of that later in the show so that you kind of know what that's all about. And that is called Woolen Spinning Radio. Today I have some knits in progress, I have a spin in progress, and I also have a little bit more about color studies, which is something that we've been working through on the Ravelry group, which is Woolen Spinning. But first I wanted to start with a giveaway. We had the blast off along that we were working on throughout December of 2016. This was a sort of a thread that I had started to just help everybody stay really motivated, get everybody going with gift knitting, anything that they really wanted to get finished. And I chose out of my stash 125 grams of sparkly merino from Hedgehog Fibers. This is 75% extra fine merino and 20% silk and 5% sparkle. It's in purples and oranges, and some brown is in there. It's just kind of a really fun batch of fiber. I have 2 of these, and so with mine I'm actually going to spin it quite fine and Navajo ply it. That's been my plan, and it's going to eventually be something for Norah. And the second one I thought that I would give away. So I drew from random.org, and the winner was Fiber Centric, which is Sandra in Toronto. So congratulations, Sandra. If you could get in touch with me with your mailing address, that would be very helpful, and I'll pop that in the mail for you. So I'll start with my spin in progress, my SIP, if you will. I have been working through my bin. I'm really torn about what to do with my Spin the Bin for the Completely Twisted and Arbitrary group on Ravelry. For those who haven't heard about Spin the Bin, basically it's a commitment that you make at the beginning of the year. You fill up a bin of fiber. There's specific rules about how much fiber minimum you have to have. And you fill it up, you take a photo of it, you take a photo of your bin, and there's rules around that as well, because you can swap out fiber once for no penalty if you have a photo of your bin. Anyways, there's a lot of explanation in the Spin the Bin thread on the Completely Twisted and Arbitrary group. There will be links in the show notes at welfordpearls.com if you're interested in finding out more. I'm not sure if I'm formally going to submit my bin on the CTA group. I might just do it on my own and have my own thing on my handspun projects page on Ravelry. I'm kind of torn. Katrina's doing it as well, and she's sort of torn. She's Crafty Jacks in the Ravelry group, and many of you know her well. And I'm just sort of I don't want to have too many really structured things in my life this year, and because we're sort of focusing on other things as a family, and so I'm not sure what I want to do about this bin thing, but I did pick 12 braids. I talked about it last week. So I started my first braid because my goal is to have one done every month this year. So this is the first bobbin that's finished. This is Kinfolk Yarn and Fibre she is a local to me dyer. Kaylin does beautiful colors. She's going to be at Fibres West for those who are interested, who are local. Fibres West is a big fiber festival that's very weaving and spinning focused, that happens in March here in the Fraser Valley, just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her at the show and seeing her booth. This is her colorway called Mardi Gras, and I've had this braid, and I actually have another one that's going to be February's spin in my stash forever. So I thought that I should probably spin them up. This is Corriedale. I had 4 ounces. It's in the colorway Mardi Gras, like I said. And I'm actually down to my last 2 bumps of fiber. So my bobbin is currently... I stripped the fiber down 6 times, and each of these little nests I did 3 per bobbin for a 2-ply. I'm not worrying about how the color matches up. I'm just spinning and enjoying it, and then I'll ply it, and it will be what it will be. These colors are some of my favorite colors: the purple, the yellow, the tealy blue. I wear these colors a lot. So I'm kind of thinking about... I might knit a shawl with this. I'm not totally sure. I'm going to have 8 ounces when I'm done, but it depends on my yardage. So I'm spinning the singles at about 13, 14 wraps per inch, and I'm hoping, at 20 wraps per inch, and I'm hoping that will give me a finished yarn of about 13 or 14 wraps per inch. So I'm spinning to a fingering weight for the singles, and I'm going to ply it for sort of a DK weight when I'm done. So that is that project. Corriedale for me is a very easy spin. It's a very easy fiber to spin. It was one of the fibers that I learned on. A lot of people, like my friend Katrina, don't like it next to the skin. They find it a bit too prickly, a little bit coarse, a little bit toothy. I personally, it doesn't bother me, although I wouldn't want to wear it day in, day out, week in, week out. My Tinder cardigan that I'm wearing is in Cascade Eco. And I know a lot of people don't like Cascade Eco next to their skin. So if you don't like Cascade Eco, you wouldn't like this. But Corriedale tends to be a little bit more hard wearing. It is longer stapled, so it's easy to spin. I'm spinning this on 6-to-1 on my Lundrum and keeping it quite low twist. And then I'm going to ply it at a higher ratio so that I can get it plied faster, and also just tighten up the twist for a slightly harder wearing yarn. So that's my plan for that. So the next thing that I've been working on this week is actually something that I didn't even talk about last week. I'm not even sure if I alluded to it, but it's something that I've been planning for a while. Norah and I went to the island. I did mention about the island. We went to the island last weekend for my niece's 3rd birthday, and Norah turns 3 at the end of March. And for Christmas, which I did talk about on the show, I had knit Claire, my niece, a cream toque, and I showed it to you guys on the show, and I ripped it out, I restarted it, and I eventually knit a cream toque, and then it had a scallop pattern, and then I finished off with another scallop pattern so that it sort of looked like cutout hearts all together. And then I had a cream crown, and then a colored, I did a cream pom-pom at the top, I think. Anyways, it was a really cute toque. It turned out really beautifully, and I was going to knit one for Norah. And then when we were coming back on the ferry that night, we were having dinner, and because we had decided, my mom and I, she came with me, we decided to have dinner on the ferry just to expedite getting home, and rather than trying to feed Norah once we got home or trying to feed her before we left Victoria, we decided to eat on the ferry because it's a little bit expensive. It's sort of a treat. It's just White Spot, which for anybody who's from Western Canada knows what White Spot is. It's kind of like Applebee's, or trying to think of what else it would be like. It's not like Denny's. Anyways, it's just sort of a West Coast BC kind of thing, and restaurant. And so we were eating, and a couple of ladies walked by, and they commented on Norah's sweater because she had asked to wear her Christmas sweater from last year that I had knit for the kids for sort of we were in Toronto last Christmas, and so it was sort of a special thing, and I wanted to knit them sweaters. And then they came out too big because I done the gauge swatches wrong, and it was kind of a comedy of errors with their sweaters. But now, a year later, they fit the kids perfectly. So Norah's been wearing her purple one that I knit for her. And the cool thing about that was that she was sitting there and she's wearing it, and these ladies walked past and commented on it. And the one lady said, "Oh, do you knit a lot for your kids?" Because I said, "Oh yeah, you know, it didn't fit last year and now it fits." And she saw that I was wearing something hand knit, and so she asked me if I was a knitter. My big long story to tell you is that Norah then, after the ladies walked away, said, "Could you knit me more?" And I said, "Yes, I can knit you another sweater. What would you like?" So she wants a purple and green sweater. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen the yarn that I bought for that, because I really don't, it's not my personal taste to put a green like what's in my exploration station next to a purple like what's in this. It's just not my favorite thing. And so I was trying to figure out how I could get her to sort of want purple, but then that we could kind of play with the green a little bit. So we ended up picking a really beautiful tealy blue that's a very, very light, gentle color, and it's actually called Calico on the Barocco Vintage website. So after we picked that yarn for her sweater, I also picked up some white, which isn't really a true white. It's sort of an off-white, and it's called Mochi, M-O-C-H-I, and it's sort of it's got a slightly warmer hint to it than white does. It's a little bit more on the creamy side, but not cream. Anyways, I bought 2 skeins of this, and this is the yarn that I'm talking about that was from Claire's toque that's left over. This is all that's left from the knitting that I've done on Norah's sweater. And this is Norah's sweater. So I took 2 patterns. I took the flax pullover by Tin Can Knits and the Playful Stripes cardigan pattern from Lana Dacos. And I sort of merged them together, and the flax cardigan gave me the stitch counts that I needed for a worsted weight sweater, but the Playful Stripes kind of gave me the 1x1 ribbing at the top, and also this really, really cute picot edge at the bottom, which I may or may not keep. I might rip it out. I may just do a 1x1 rib at the bottom. I tried it on Norah. It's super cute, but it's gonna do this and fold and roll for basically the entire life of the cardigan. And because this is a yarn that can go in the washing machine, I'm not probably going to block it every single time it comes out of the wash. I'm just going to lay it flat to dry and move on. So I suspect that within a couple of months of wearing, it's going to end up permanently folded. And while the picot is cute, I really, really like just the plain 1x1 rib. So I might change that. The only other thing is that I'm doing the sleeves flat instead of in the round, mostly just because they're so small, and the seamed edge on the inside of the sleeve, Norah pulls on her sweaters a lot, and so I'm hoping that having a seam up the inside, up the inseam, will help to just with the structure, because she's always pulling on her sleeves. It's kind of like a nervous habit a little bit. So that is in progress, and that's what I've been working on. I've really only been working on this. It is just so much fun. I really enjoyed watching the handspun change colors. This is a very early yarn of mine that I made. It was when I first came back to knitting back to spinning about 3 years ago, and was starting to spin a little bit more seriously and a little bit more intentionally. And this yarn was sort of that transition from not really paying attention to starting to pay attention to consistency and distance of draft and all of that kind of stuff. So this yarn is quite inconsistent. The beautiful thing about knitting and inconsistencies in our handspun is that once you knit with it and you wash it, it's really hard to tell unless it's incredibly inconsistent to the point where you've made a thick and thin yarn and you want those thicker sections to stand out a little bit more. But it's really quite amazing how even this looks once it's knit up. And this was chain plied or Navajo plied. And the colors are just so pretty. It's very similar actually to the hedgehog fibers, funnily enough. But I think for a little girl, it just really suits her and suits her personality. And so I thought I'd use it up in the sweater, and whatever's left, I will do a toque for her. And that'll be the end of the yarn. That'll be the end of this fiber. So kind of bittersweet. So that is that little cardigan. And it's just so cute. I did knit, so Tin Can Knits, one of the things I really like about their sweaters is they give you a range in the sizes. So it's 2 to 4 years, 1 to 2 years. Anyways, they give you like that kind of a range. So for Norah, I did the 2 to 4 years. So I cast on for that one. My gauge was perfect with 4.5 millimeter needles. I am using my new Driftwood needles, my new Likey needles. I'm really enjoying working with them. My favorite needles and my go-to needles are my Addi Turbos, and I know some people don't find those pointy enough, but I do. I really like them. These are a little bit pointier than my Addi Turbos, I think, but I really like the tip. I find some of the needles that are too sharp for me, I tend to split the yarn quite a lot when they're too sharp and when the tips are too sharp. My wrists are also finding I have to just knit a bit slower than I used to. I have to intentionally knit slower, which I know sounds sort of silly, but my wrists like it better, and I find the wood needles slow me down. The yarn slides across nicely, but not as fast as on the metal needles, and so I'm finding my wrists are actually thanking me for using wooden needles a little bit. I'm swatching for another sweater right now, and I actually am using my metal needles, and I'm gonna see how that goes, because I may switch over to these halfway through if my wrists start to bother me. So we'll see how that goes. We're gonna take a really quick break here. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a teaser and a taste of what Woolen Spinning Radio sounds like. You can look at some pretty photos while we're doing that, which will be the topic of conversation when we come back. I hope you enjoy it.
For spinning or for carding?
Well, let's talk about both.
So for spinning, when I look at a braid that, I think most people when they look at a braid of like I think of one of the colorways that we got in club from Sweet Georgia a while back. Mm-hmm. It was called Autumn Moon.
Yeah, good
and
one.
it was a beautiful braid of blue and red and yellow, mm-hmm. which is more of a triad because you're dealing with all three primary colors. Mm-hmm. And so where the yellow and the red mixed, you got this sort of burnt orange color, and there was a little bit of white thrown in there, and you got a little bit of purple where the red and purple mixed, but it was just this big burst of color. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people look at that and they go, it's going to get muddy.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back, everyone. So I really wanted, you saw in the photos that streamed as you were listening to Katrina and my conversation there on Woolen Spinning Radio about, so the photos were directly related to the color studies that we've been doing in the group. So that the photo series and my drum carder and everything is a little bit of a teaser of things to come, probably next week, of what I've done with the colorway. We've been working in the Ravelry group up on talking about split complements, and my friend Karen of Farm Fairy Fibre here in Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, dyed up a couple of colorways for us to play with. So last week I showed you my traditional 2-ply that I had spun, and my goal is to have sort of a sample every week to chat about. But this week I actually have 2 samples because I took I divided the braid up into 4, and if you want to know more about what I did, just head back to last week's episode and you can, I show you sort of what I did. One of the 4 nests that I played with this week, I actually divided into 6. So I took the nest and I stripped it down even more into 6 little bunches of fiber, just like this. And with 3 of them, I actually spun the merino as singles. And with the other 3, I spun to the same weight that I had with my 2-ply, but I did a center pull ball. So we've been having a huge conversation on the Slack channel, which is part of the Patreon support for the show, about center pull balls and the difference between a center pull and a traditional 2-ply. So I'm hoping that the difference between these 2 yarns will be evident and will be obvious after I show you. And I intentionally wound the center pull off on my smaller nitty knotty and my traditional 2-ply off on my bigger nitty knotty so that I would be able to show you. Oh, thank you, Norah. Do you want to give it to me and then you can say goodbye? Thank you, Norah. Norah just brought me some of my yarn. Okay. Goodbye. Bye-bye. So the difference between the traditional 2-ply is that there's these huge chunks of green here, and I talked about this last week, and there's the pink and the camel brown matched up really quite nicely, and there's a little bit of barber pulling, but for the most part the colors matched up quite nicely. Now when you do a traditional 2-ply, basically you're taking 2 nests of fiber that you've stripped down in the same direction from the braid of fiber that you started with. You're spinning 1 to 1 bobbin and 1 to the other bobbin, and then you're plying them together. So theoretically the colors, if they go red, orange, blue, theoretically when they ply it'll be red, orange, blue. With a traditional 2-ply, it partially depends on how much you strip the fiber, how consistent your spinning is, how consistent the weight was between the 2 nests of fiber. So did you have one nest that was quite a bit thicker, one that was quite a bit thinner? Because if you have more fiber in the one and less fiber in the other, you're going to get longer and shorter color repeats when you go to ply. But with a center pull 2-ply, you're taking that red, orange, yellow, and you're literally folding it on itself so that the yellow ends up plying with the red, and theoretically then the orange will ply together. And you're still going to get a little bit of barber pulling and whatnot, because that sort of tends to be what happens with center pull balls. And it's one of the techniques that people really love about center pulls, is that it really muddles up the color. If you want the color and the colorway, the original colorway that was dyed on the fiber, if you sort of want to get that to meld away and to go, for the most part, you're going to end up with a barber pulled 2-ply. What I really love about this, because a lot of people don't like barber pull, and I totally understand why, but what I really love about center pull 2-plies is that they minimize the number of bobbins you need, because you only need 1 bobbin. I tend to rest my singles usually for a little bit before I do a center pull 2-ply, so I'll finish spinning one day, I'll wind it on my ball winder the next day and ply it then, just to give the singles a chance to deactivate a little bit and to rest a little bit. When it hits the water, when you go to wash it later, it's still going to reactivate and that twist is going to come back. You need to make sure that you're still putting enough twist into your 2-ply when you're plying to account for that twist that's just settled while you're because you rested it. But what I really like is the resulting skein is just a little bit more blended, in the sense that there is more barber pulling. The green matches up a few times but not a lot, and in a skein like this and in a fiber like this where the tone between the different colors is very similar, and it's sort of, if you were to grayscale this, it would be very difficult to tell what's pink and what's green. What I really like about that then is when you go to knit with it, it kind of creates like a very homogeneous item. You don't have a lot of only green sections, only red sections. There's not as much striping. It tends to sort of look very homogeneous, and I really like that. So that's part of the reason why I do use center pull 2-plies quite a bit. The other thing is, if you have a fiber that was dyed that is quite different in its tones, and you do have lights and darks that are quite extreme, you're going to end up with this really obvious barber pulling, and it can create a lot of depth and texture in your yarns and a lot of interest. So it's definitely something to try, and it's really nice when you can see them side by side, because to the untrained eye they don't look very different. But as you begin to become more discerning about your spinning and about your color management, you can start to see why you would choose one over the other. So this is the 2-ply and this is the center pull. So I quite like both of them. They are both very effective. I really like the barber pulling in this one, but I also really like these areas where the green all matches up. Becca, who's one of our, she's been just doing tons and tons of stuff, and if you want to see what she's been doing, head over to the color studies thread on Ravelry in the Woolen Spinning group, and I'll link to it in the show notes. She did a gradient, and that was really beautiful. So this is one of those colorways that a gradient works really, really well, because you don't have that difference in tone. So a shawl, for example, that goes from, say, pink down into the camel and down into the green, or vice versa, would be really, really pretty, I think. And still very gentle enough that if there was a stitch pattern, it would still show up. So the only other thing that I did this week was the singles, and I intentionally kept it very low twist. I used my slow whirl on my matchless, and which I think is 5-to-1 or 6-to-1, and I spun a very low twist singles, and then I fold it with hot water. I'm not sure that I folded enough. I might actually wash it again and full it a little bit more, because there's areas that look almost a little bit underspun. Almost a little bit like unspun. So I need to make sure that it's strong enough that I could actually knit with this. But the nice thing about doing singles with a yarn like this is it does preserve the color. This would be very similar to what it would look like if it was chain plied. And I quite like the look of it. I was surprised how much I liked this. So this preserves the colorway and it keeps the color really super clean. And I bought the 100% merino so I could full it and make still, you know, a yarn strong enough for knitting with. So that's something else to consider. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend full of fibery goodness and lots of spinning and knitting and weaving and crochet and whatever else you do. Stay warm, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye, everyone.